you know. Do you really think I've fallen seriously in love with you? Huh? I realized that David didn't truly love me. This harsh reality made me feel dizzy. David then hurled insults at me, as if to rub salt in the wound. I only wanted a wife who would take care of the housework because I'm busy with work every day. And yet, you go and get sick, ending up in the hospital. I can't deal with a sick old woman. I want a divorce. But just as everything seemed to turn dark before my eyes, I remembered something I had seen earlier. With that, I had nothing to fear. With this thought, I regained my composure and responded to David. Fine. I have a strong ally. So, I don't mind letting go of someone like David. However, I did think about giving David, who exploited me and even went back to his ex-girlfriend while I was hospitalized, a taste of his own medicine. My name is Michelle, a 45-year-old housewife, newly married. Having not married until my mid-40s. My life had been a simple routine of going between home and work. My only pleasures were going out for drinks and shopping. And, while hoping for happiness, buying lottery tickets as an annual ritual. Then, I came across a marriage app for people in their 40s. I had attended matchmaking parties before, but never had any luck. So, I started using the app casually, never imagining I would meet my current husband through it. He was 3 years older than me, named David Owen. He was a department head in a company with over 1,000 employees, earning a handsome annual salary of $100,000. He looked serious and hardworking. Curious about why such a good man was still unmarried, I casually asked him during our first meeting. He answered with a shy smile. Well, I've been too busy with work to find any opportunity for a relationship. It made sense, given the responsibilities of managing many employees. Yet, he started using the marriage app because he felt lonely at his age. The way he shyly responded seemed very charming to me. Perhaps from that moment, I began to feel attracted to David. He too seemed to like me, saying, "Honestly, I never thought I'd really find someone through an app. But I'm glad to have met someone like you, Michelle." No, I'm the one who should say that. I had almost given up on finding someone at my age. I can't believe I met someone as wonderful as you through this app. We both thought our meeting was miraculous and shared a smile. It didn't take long for us to consider marriage. And so, we got married 6 months after meeting. On the eve of registering our marriage, I bought a lottery ticket, thinking it might be my last time as a single person. Right after the wedding, David made a request. I'm busy with work, so sharing household chores is a bit. I want you, Michelle, to quit your job and stay at home. Huh? Well, my mother was a housewife, so I don't mind focusing on household chores. I agreed to his request and quit my job, starting our married life. David seemed happy eating my cooking, saying it was delicious. It was a joy I hadn't felt during my lonely meals before. However, I had no idea this happiness would be short-lived. Just a month into our marriage, David's attitude changed drastically. At first, even if he worked late, he would come straight home. But recently, it wasn't unusual for him to come home late at night. Even if I waited with dinner prepared, he would say he had already eaten and didn't need it. I wished he had told me earlier. I held back my sadness and cleaned up the food. Even on the rare occasions he ate at home, he would complain about the meal. Ugh. I come home tired and you serve me fish I don't like? I can't eat such plain food. Make something with meat. Oh? But I don't have any meat today. I'll make a meat dish tomorrow, so please bear with this for today. If you don't have it, go buy it. I want meat, so make it now. Despite it being past 9 p.m., I was sent to buy meat from a supermarket about to close. David's arrogance wasn't just about food. No matter how carefully I cleaned, he always found something to complain about. He, being tall, would point out high places I couldn't reach without a stool and scold me for leaving dust. I can't reach those high places often, I'll clean them during the big cleaning. Please don't point them out all the time. But David would reply with a look of disdain. Shh. So you're going to leave dust in high places until the big cleaning? Short people really are useless. It hurt to be belittled for my height, but arguing back only led to more complaints. So I endured silently. Taking advantage of this, David complained about every household chore I did. All he did was laze around, claiming he was tired. At first, I thought he was kind and gentle, but his true nature began to show over time. Despite this, I told myself that this is what marriage is like and endured, being married at this age. But lately, I've been feeling heart palpitations and pain in my chest. What's wrong with me? Well, I think it'll pass soon. I was concerned about the discomfort in my chest, but ignored it for a while. Perhaps that was a mistake. My condition gradually worsened, and I started to experience shortness of breath and dizziness. Unable to bear it any longer, I decided to get a medical checkup at the hospital. It turned out that my symptoms were due to a heart condition caused by stress. The mental stress that kept hitting me every day had inflicted significant damage on my body. I had to be hospitalized for a while. I went home to prepare for my hospital stay and told David Owen about it. But instead of showing concern, he frowned and said, "What? A long-term hospitalization? Seriously? What about the housework? Who's going to do all that? I'm sorry to inconvenience you. During my hospital stay, please manage with takeout or prepared meals. There's a dryer for the laundry, and I don't think it will get too dirty if it's just you." Hey. Are you saying I have to do all the housework? That's impossible. I'm too busy for that. I'm sorry. It's just until I get discharged. I apologized in desperation, but David remained in a bad mood. Great, you can't do anything but housework. And now you're talking about hospitalization. You're really useless. Remember this when you get discharged. I started preparing for the hospitalization alone, showered with his abusive words. It felt like I was running away from the current situation. And I even felt guilty, though I knew it wasn't my fault. The next morning, David was still in a bad mood and didn't even see me off to the hospital. He just went straight to work. I had no choice but to go to the hospital alone, carrying my luggage. David never visited me during my hospital stay. I had a feeling he wouldn't, so I brought all my change of clothes with me. However, the hospital room felt very lonely without any visitors. To pass the time, I surfed the internet on my smartphone every day. Then, I received a strange message in my messaging app. It was from David, but the content left me dumbfounded. "Katie, I love you. I'll be done with work soon, wait for me." I was about to read it, but right before I could, it showed, "The message has been deleted." Who is this Katie? The message was softly worded, something David had never sent to me. Maybe he was having an affair. As this anxious thought crossed my mind, my chest started to hurt like it was being squeezed. I hurriedly pressed the nurse call button. Fortunately, it was just a minor attack, and the pain subsided after about 5 minutes. As per the nurse's instructions. The nurse advised me, "Stress is not good for you, try to think of something enjoyable." But I had no idea what to think about. Then, I remembered the lottery ticket I bought before registering my marriage. I think the results were announced yesterday. I checked the winning numbers on the official website from my smartphone. Half as a distraction. To my utter shock, I saw, "Congratulations on your win," displayed on my page. No way. Can it be? I was excitedly counting the digits of the winning amount. That's when the door to the hospital room opened, and David walked in. Behind him was a woman in her early 30s, unfamiliar and somewhat flashy looking. "Hey. How's it going?" David spoke to me in a carefree voice. "How can I be fine? I'm hospitalized. And you didn't even show your face here until now." "Of course. Who do you think had to deal with all the trouble?" "Work and housework, it's been tough for me." David was still only concerned about his own hardships, showing no care for my condition. I replied with a puzzled expression. "Oh, is that so? Sorry for the inconvenience." David, unfazed by my displeased tone, smirked and replied, "Michelle, you really are charmless." "Well, it's fine. From now on, you won't have to worry about inconveniences. Take your time in the hospital." "What do you mean by that?" David's cryptic words made me feel uneasy again. Then, he put his arm around the shoulder of the woman behind him and said smugly, "Now, she's taking care of my needs." "Right, Katie?" Katie was the name in the message earlier. The woman, snuggled up to David Owen, smiled coyly. Who is that woman?" "Ha! You're surprised, right? You were useless. So I reached out to my ex-girlfriend, Katie. She still loves me, so she came running right over." David was smug as he said this. I tried to stay calm and asked back. "Oh, an old acquaintance came to help out? I'm sorry for the inconvenience. I need to stay in the hospital for a while longer." As I spoke, the two of them burst into laughter. "This wife, she's a bit odd, isn't she? She doesn't get it at all." "Well, can't be helped, right? She never had a boyfriend till her mid-40s. David and Katie looked at me with utter contempt. I knew very well they were having an affair. I wanted to say that, but getting worked up would only strain my heart more. So, I deliberately kept my response calm. David, seeing my silence, said something unbelievable. "Anyway, I don't need a frail, old woman anymore. From now on, I'm staying with Katie." Saying that, David thrust a piece of paper with green writing at me. It meant he wanted a divorce. Even though I was trying to stay composed, I couldn't hide my turmoil. "Why? An ex-girlfriend means you broke up once, right? You were with me, and now you want to go back to her." When I asked, David replied with a look of disdain. "You know. Do you really think I've fallen seriously in love with you? Huh?" I realized that David had never loved me. Feeling this harsh truth, my vision started to spin. David then berated me further. "See? I just wanted a wife to do the housework because I'm busy every day. And then you go and get sick, landing in the hospital. I can't deal with a sick old woman, I want a divorce." My world darkened even more, but then I remembered something I had seen earlier. As long as I had that, I feared nothing. Thinking this, I regained my composure and retorted to David. "Fine." David's eyes widened at my unexpected reaction. "Huh? Are you serious? Without me, you have nowhere to go. Don't act tough." "I'm not acting tough. But make sure you properly file this divorce paper, okay?" I signed the divorce paper handed to me and returned it to David. "Oh. Okay. I'll take care of it. I'll file it tomorrow." David said this, still looking puzzled. Katie stared at me with a contemptuous gaze and a sly smile. "You must have accepted your fate against my youth and beauty." "Yeah. Right? I'm so proud. To think I could make Katie, the #1 at the nightclub, mine. Even when we were dating, I thought she'd dump an older guy like me. No matter how popular I was at the nightclub. I've always been all about David. Once the divorce is filed, let's submit our marriage registration immediately. Nightclub? Number 1. David quickly covered his mouth at my reaction. All this time, I thought he was working hard, but he was going to that kind of club. Come to think of it, there were days after our marriage when he came home drunk, claiming overtime. His excuses for having already eaten now seemed suspicious. Katie, noticing my doubtful expression, spoke up. Doesn't matter, right? Anyway, David and I will be together. You're no longer needed. After saying that, Katie grabbed David's arm and left. While I suffered through my hospitalization, David decided to cheat and remarry. I couldn't forgive David for this. Even though I'd feel relieved after breaking up, I decided to give him a taste of his own medicine before that. I started planning my revenge on David. Later, while resting in the hospital room, I recovered smoothly and finally got permission to be discharged. Since David remarried and moved to Katie's apartment, I would live alone in our former house after discharge. Upon returning home, I immediately went to the bank to cash in my winning lottery ticket. It would take about a week to receive such a large amount. In the meantime, I searched online for a good lawyer. I wanted to investigate David's past relationships. Was their relationship really over before we got married? If they had continued their affair, I could claim compensation. After successfully cashing my lottery winnings, I found a lawyer and requested an investigation. The investigation confirmed that David had indeed continued his relationship with Katie. Katie, a former nightclub worker, was indeed very popular, just as David had mentioned. They had started dating back then and never really ended their relationship. Essentially, David married me while maintaining his relationship with her, treating me like a housekeeper. Thinking about this made my blood boil. But I had to stay calm to not worsen my health. If I were well, I'd confront David immediately and demand compensation. I decided to leave everything to my lawyer and wait for the right time. Soon after, David called me. Hey. Why did a lawyer suddenly show up demanding compensation for cheating? What's this about? Just as the lawyer said. Pay up quickly, or I'm fine taking this to court. Shut up. First of all, where did you get the money to hire a lawyer? Court cases cost money too. And the hospital bills must have been no joke. David, unaware of my financial situation, tried to use it against me. But his careless words backfired. Right. Despite being married, you didn't contribute to my hospital expenses. I spoke to the lawyer, and apparently, I can claim those costs from you too. David's careless remark turned the tables in my favor. David didn't say anything back, possibly thinking I messed up. From the other end of the phone, I could hear a woman's voice saying, "Let me listen for a bit." It was likely Katie eavesdropped on the conversation. Hey. Do you even have the right to claim compensation? You got sick on your own and left your husband hanging. I was the one who took care of him, so if anyone should pay compensation, it's you. Right. Exactly. David, bolstered by Katie's presence, regained his confidence. But I calmly replied, "Oh? Didn't the lawyer tell you? They've already investigated that David continued his relationship with Katie after we were married. I hired a competent lawyer, so there's no escaping this. Stop bluffing. You keep saying this, but you don't have that kind of money." That's right. Despite your high income, you only gave me a monthly allowance of $1,700. I had to manage the rent, utilities, and groceries with that. Maybe that's worth claiming for compensation too. David had always been unfair to me. So, whatever he said only dug his grave deeper. A court case would clearly be in my favor. Keeping a meticulous record on the household budget app would serve as evidence. David still thought I was just bluffing. A competent lawyer, huh? That's a lie. Your lawyer can't be that great. Anyway, I won't be fooled. So, I sent him the link to the law firm I found online. This is the law firm I hired. You got their business card, right? The lawyer's photo was on the website. David must have been shocked to see it. This is a famous law firm, isn't it? Where did you get the money to hire them? Hearing David's flustered voice, I figured it was time to reveal the truth. Actually, I won $5 million in this year's lottery, including the consecutive numbers prize. What? My revelation stunned David and Katie. No way. I never heard about you buying lottery tickets. I bought them with the money I earned before we got married. I didn't think I needed to report every little thing, did I? There was silence for a while, then David spoke in a panicked tone. You're home right now, right? I'm coming over, wait for me. What could David possibly want now? 20 minutes later, David arrived alone at my house, surprisingly with a cheerful demeanor. Michelle. I came to talk about dividing the assets. Huh? Dividing assets? David. When he came over looking pleased, I wondered what he could possibly be thinking. But really, I was speechless at the absurdity of what he said. Yeah, you bought the lottery ticket before marriage. But you cashed it after we were married, right? Then, as your husband, I should be entitled to half of it, right? Sorry, but that's impossible. I cashed it after our divorce was finalized. And the cause of our divorce was your infidelity. Don't say that. We were once married, so please. Even just a quarter would be fine. David said this while pleading with his hands together. I firmly rebutted his convenient proposal. No way. Not only will I not divide any property, but I also need to receive compensation from you. Well, about that. David seemed to be desperately thinking of something in his favor. Listen. The truth is, I was deceived by that woman. She was only interested in my job and came to me for that reason. She's a night worker, so she has lots of clients, and I think she might be involved with other men too. So what? What are you trying to say? Basically, I'm a victim who was deceived, not someone who cheated. Of course, I'll break up with her and never cheat again. So, can we start over? I was astounded by his ridiculous excuses. You think such nonsense is going to work? You definitely cheated. Look, there's plenty of evidence right here. I said this while scattering photos of David's infidelity on the table. The pictures showed David with his arm around Katie, entering and exiting a hotel. And scenes suggesting intimate activities in a park corner. All of them were clear evidence of his infidelity. Damn it. Collecting such things. David, looking frustrated, picked up the photos and spoke. Then, to add insult to injury, Katie appeared. Apparently, she had followed David but had been hiding in the shadows to observe the situation. Hey, David. Who are you calling a deceiver? Stop saying whatever you want. You were the one who came crying to me, right? Gah. Katie, you heard that. David seemed to be at his wit's end. Katie, having heard all of David's selfish justifications, was furious. Don't belittle me because I'm a former nightclub worker. I've always loved you, even after we broke up. What are you going to do about these feelings now? I'm sorry, I was wrong. Surrounded by two women, David was completely subdued. I was so happy when David came to rely on me. You trampled on these feelings, so I'll be claiming compensation from you too. Hey. Why do I have to pay compensation to my affair partner? Affair partner? We were legally married for over a month, weren't we? Well, technically it was an affair, so. Seeing David's distressed expression, I almost burst out laughing. David. You can't sweet-talk your way out of understanding a woman's heart. David seemed completely disheartened by my words. With the matter seemingly resolved, I decided to call one more person who had been listening in. You can come out now. Huh? There's still someone else here? At my call, a person waiting in the next room entered. Hello. I've heard everything. You're the lawyer from that time. Yes, this lawyer had told me to contact him anytime if something happened. So, when David said he was coming to my house, I immediately contacted him. The lawyer had quietly entered the house through the back door and waited in the next room. Mr. Owen. As Michelle told you earlier, you have no rights to property division. Regarding the compensation, considering Katie's involvement, we will re-evaluate that matter. Hearing this from the lawyer, David was left gaping, in a daze. With everything resolved, I finally felt relieved. Afterwards, I received compensation from David Owen. And we settled the property division by splitting his income during our marriage. David is now divorced from Katie and seems to be living alone. However, David's company is a major corporation with strict rules. His affairs and successive divorces became known to his company. And it appears that he was fired. Originally, he was known for his flamboyant relationships with women, which had caught the attention of his superiors. That's why news of his recent divorce scandal leaked out quickly. I haven't seen David since then, but someone told me this information. It was none other than Katie, his affair partner. Katie seemed remorseful about her actions towards me and came to my house to apologize. I'm sorry. I will pay the compensation for the affair gradually from my earnings, so please wait. Katie said that and apologized to me. However, I declined the compensation from Katie. It seems that since leaving her job, she has not had steady employment. Initially, she managed with her savings. But her lavish spending habits from her nightclub days didn't disappear. And now her savings are depleted. That's why she clung to David, who had money, and tried to stay with him by any means. But, I know it sounds like an excuse, but it's true that I loved David. I remembered the earnest look in her eyes when she said she had always loved David. That's why I decided to let things go smoothly with Katie. On the other hand, David lost his job and was in a financial crisis due to paying compensation to me and Katie. So, he was evicted from the apartment he moved into because he couldn't pay the rent. Then he came to me with a pleading look in his eyes. Michelle, I really messed up. Please forgive me this one time. From now on, I'll do whatever you say, just let me stay here. And of course, I'm not asking for money, just to stay. David spoke in a pitiful voice. I casually replied. Sure, you can stay here as long as you want. Really? Oh, thank you so much. I let David into the house for the time being. But that night, while David was asleep, I packed my belongings. I had been looking for a new place to move to and had recently completed the arrangements. At dawn, when David woke up, the moving truck was already there. Hey. What's going on? Why are you packing so much stuff? Where are you going? Oh, I'm moving today. You know this house is a rental, right? So from now on, you'll have to pay the rent yourself. It's $1,000 per month. What? I can't afford that right now. You tricked me. I haven't tricked you. I just said you could stay here as long as you want. So, Good luck with the rent.
Bye. Bye.
I left the house, saying that. Since then, I've canceled my cell phone and made sure David can't contact me. Of course, I didn't give him my new address. Sometime later, I happened to meet the landlord of the house where David and I used to live together. When I asked about David, it seems he left because he couldn't pay the rent. Where he went is unknown to anyone. Well, I've left David to his own devices, and am now living a luxurious life in my dream high-rise condo. The window offers a panoramic view of the city, truly a prime location. As for my health, I've completely recovered from the stress of being apart from David. The high-rise condo has a fitness room on the first floor, so I can exercise every day. Also, since it's pet-friendly, I've started keeping a Pomeranian, which I've always loved. From now on, this female Pomeranian named Mocha is my precious family. But even though I got $5 million from the lottery, I can't just play around. I've always liked working. So I decided to be rehired by the company I worked for before my marriage. Coincidentally, I saw a mid-career recruitment ad on a job site the day I moved. When I inquired, it turned out they were struggling to find good personnel after I left. So, when I asked to be rehired, my supervisor was delighted. Now I'm comfortable in my cozy residence and familiar work environment. I've achieved the ideal lifestyle. Although I wasn't blessed with a happy marriage, from now on, I plan to enjoy living life my way. That is the greatest happiness for me now. Allison. I want a divorce. I see. Regardless of the reason, I can't live with someone who's had an affair. Let's get divorced right away. I printed out the divorce papers on the computer and thrust them in front of David. File it now. We'll see each other at the court. I'm sorry for hurting you. But thank you for understanding. We will be happy. When David and Sandy were about to leave, Sandy came close to me and whispered softly, "It's going to be a life of luxury from now on. Sorry for stealing David from you?" After saying that, Sandy showed a triumphant expression, linked arms with David, and left. After all the procedures were completed, Sandy stretched out and spoke to me. Finally, it's over. Well, it had to be done for me to be happy with David. Good luck living on beans, Allison. With a triumphant expression, Sandy looked down on me and laughed. I didn't respond, and David, looking puzzled, joined in the conversation. Why does it turn into a conversation about Allison being poor after divorcing me? Huh? Because you're divorcing the high-earning David. So the housewife Allison will lose her income, right? Hearing Sandy's words, David burst into laughter. What are you talking about? Poor life is on our side. My name is Allison. I'm a working housewife. My job is very busy, and I spend a lot of time away from home. David supports me by taking care of all the household chores in my place. Essentially, he's a full-time house husband. We've been married for only 3 months. Despite being newlyweds and my frequent absences, David never complains and always comforts me when I'm tired from work. I truly appreciate him. We had a harmonious marriage, but we never thought the arrival of someone would drastically change our situation. One day, when I came home, David spoke to me. "Can I invite an old friend over to our house?" "That's fine, but it's unusual for you to invite someone over. I met them after a long time recently. We had a great time and agreed to meet again. I wanted to introduce them to you." David explained the situation with a smile. Seeing his face made me smile too. "I see, thank you. I can take the next weekend off, so please ask them if they're available." "Got it. Thanks, Allison. Looking happy, David immediately started sending a message on his smartphone. I hardly ever see David angry or in a bad mood. I love David for his kind, honest nature and his carefree smile. David's old friend, named Sandy, was available the next weekend to come over. David was very fond of this person. He must be a wonderful man. I was also looking forward to meeting Sandy. Next weekend. Today, Sandy is coming to visit our house. David has been cooking various dishes since morning to entertain his childhood friend. David's cooking skills are exceptional, especially his cooking. The delicious-looking dishes were lined up on the table. Sandy would surely be pleased. Sandy seems to be nearby. I'll go pick up. Saying that, David left to pick up Sandy. Our house is in a high-rise condo, with a concierge always stationed at the entrance. First-time visitors often get confused, so we make it a point to go pick up our guests. I was excited to meet him, wondering what kind of person he would be. Then, I heard the entrance door open. Come in, please. Thank you for having me. Hearing the conversation, I was puzzled. The voice was higher than I expected for a man. When Sandy entered the living room, I was surprised. Wow, what a room! It's so luxurious. Before me was a woman looking around the room curiously. David. This person. Let me introduce you. This is my childhood friend, Sandy. Sandy, this is my wife, Allison. Nice to meet you, I'm Sandy. Nice to meet you too. I hurriedly returned the greeting. I had assumed from David's childhood friend and the gender-neutral name, Sandy, that a man would be coming. David could have mentioned it was a woman. Despite feeling a bit uncomfortable, David and I decided to entertain Sandy. When we went to the dining table for the meal, Sandy naturally sat next to David. Normally, I would sit next to David, right? Though I thought so, David didn't seem to mind. It wasn't a formal occasion, so I didn't say anything. But Sandy purposely moved her chair closer to David. This is an amazing house, isn't it? The furniture is luxurious, and everything is so nice. Right? We can live like this thanks to Allison. Is that so? Supporting each other as a couple? Sandy looked up at David, gazing into his face. She never once looked at me, and I was just staring as the two of them talked. Watching Sandy touch David occasionally while chatting happily, I felt uncomfortable. David seemed not to mind at all. But it was easy to imagine that Sandy did not think of David as just an old friend. Staying silent so as not to spoil the mood, David suddenly turned to me and said, "See? Fun person, right?" It wasn't a taunt, he genuinely thought so. So, I responded with a forced smile.
Yeah.
David probably didn't realize how I felt. He must think I'm genuinely enjoying myself. Then, Sandy, who had not spoken to me at all until now, turned to me and said, "I'm really having fun too. Can I come visit again?" Sandy's expression as she said this had her mouth corners raised, but her eyes weren't smiling. Sighing vaguely in response, David cheerfully said, "I'm happy to see you two getting along." From then on, Sandy started visiting our house several times a week. Initially, she would come on weekends when I was home. But gradually the frequency of her visits increased. And now it seems she comes even when I'm at work. Today too, upon returning home, I saw Sandy's shoes in the entrance. I sighed and entered the living room. There, sitting side by side on the sofa and laughing joyfully, were David and Sandy. Sandy was linking arms with David. Even after noticing my return, there was no attempt to separate from each other. Already tired, this scene just drained me further. "Welcome back, Allison." Noticing my return, David greeted me with a smile. Sandy, without saying anything to me, just said, "Then, I'll be going home," and left the house. Sandy was here again? Isn't she coming over too much lately? I spoke with a sigh. While preparing the meal, David continued.
Yeah.
But Sandy recently got divorced and moved back to her parents' house. I guess she's feeling lonely since everyone around her is either working or has their own family. I feel sorry for her, but honestly, I'm not comfortable with you two meeting when I'm not around. The closeness feels odd. I wish you'd restrain a bit. David probably doesn't have any ill intentions. He genuinely wants to help an old friend in need. However, I couldn't feel good about Sandy, who touches my husband casually in front of his wife and intrudes into a married couple's home during the day. Hearing my request, David apologized and said he would reduce the meetings with Sandy. I had no choice but to trust David's words. However, Sandy still continued to visit our house. Even so, when she targeted the time when I was at work, I never encountered her directly. Then, why did I realize Sandy's visits? Because Sandy deliberately leaves a trace by folding the toilet paper into 3. Knowing that neither David nor I fold the paper like that, she intentionally leaves her mark. Clearly, it was a provocation. Although the frequency has decreased, she still comes every week, prompting me to express my concerns to David again. I did talk to her. She says, okay, at the time. But then she starts crying at the entrance, saying things like it's tough, it's sad. I find it hard to send her away. Unable to blame David further, I just asked him to keep asking her to refrain from visiting. David always apologized, but the situation did not improve. About a month after Sandy's first visit, she continued to come to our house. And I was mentally exhausted. I wanted to find a way to stop Sandy's visits. With that thought, I headed to a place I wouldn't normally go alone. It was David's parents' house. Maybe there would be a clue to solve this, considering the childhood friends, including their families, might have interacted. I rang the doorbell of my in-laws' house, albeit reluctantly. I usually avoid this place for a reason. Oh, Allison, you're alone? It's been a while, Mother. Seeing me alone, my mother-in-law made a blatantly displeased face. The reason was this mother-in-law. I was disliked by her. So, what brings you here all of a sudden? Nothing in particular. I hadn't shown my face for a while, so I thought I'd come to greet you. Your visit doesn't make me happy at all. I could tolerate it if David was with you, but I don't want to waste my time on you alone. Being spoken to this harshly was almost refreshing. Arguing back would only make things worse. The best strategy was to smile and let it pass. Such an uncharming daughter-in-law. If someone like Sandy were my daughter-in-law, we could have built a good relationship. I was surprised to hear Sandy's name from her. It was fortunate that the topic came from her, so as not to arouse suspicion. My mother-in-law continued talking without paying me any mind. David and she have been close since they were young. She used to say, I will marry David. And then, he ends up marrying a woman who can't even manage household chores. Who doesn't care for her family. I'm really disappointed. I'm sorry for my shortcomings. Without making excuses, I admitted my fault. Yet, my mother-in-law kept grumbling about me, repeating, he should have married Sandy, several times. If David and Sandy were to marry, my mother-in-law would be overjoyed. With that thought, I listened to her nagging absent-mindedly. 2 months after Sandy's first visit, her visits continued. It was around the time I became indifferent to the tri-folded toilet paper. Allison, there's something important I need to talk about. David, always smiling, approached me with a serious face this day. The atmosphere made me tense.
Yeah.
What is it? Are you free this weekend? I'd like to have a talk. I'm okay, but can't we talk now? No, I think the weekend would be better. With that, David left the living room. What could this important talk be about? Our relationship seemed fine when we were together. Could the talk be about Sandy? A slight unease crept in. I felt a mix of wanting to get the talk over with and not wanting the weekend to come. On the promised weekend, my suspicion was confirmed. Sandy was there, looking unsurprisingly part of the conversation. David was the first to speak. Allison. I want you to divorce me. I had somewhat anticipated this. Perhaps our marriage might end. Yet, I had hoped he would choose me in the end. To think our marriage could end so abruptly over one woman, not even half a year in. It felt like a blow to the head, making me dizzy. I like being depended on. You being busy with work and leaving the housework to me made me feel needed. It made me feel like I was supporting you. I thought so, too. Dispelling stereotypes that men should work outside and women should do housework. Supporting each other with what we're good at or enjoy seemed right. I thought we could make it work with David. But she can't do anything on her own. She can't live without me. I have to support her. David truly believed that. His desire to help those in trouble, to be the support, was genuine. Whether it's right to abandon his wife to help someone else is questionable, though. Glancing at Sandy, she looked down, not seeming remorseful at all. A remorseful person wouldn't sit deeply on a sofa with crossed legs. Probably looking down on me, thinking she finally stole David. This might be considered one of David's flaws. Suddenly, worrying about it seemed foolish. David's nature won't change. Even now, he probably feels a bit guilty, but his actions stem from a spirit of helping others. If I thought of it as service, continuing to refuse divorce. Believing he could cut ties with Sandy seemed unlikely. Staying married to David felt like a lifelong issue. Divorcing seemed the quickest solution. I see. Regardless of the reason, I can't live with someone who's had an affair. Let's get divorced right away. I printed out the divorce papers on the computer and thrust them in front of David. File it now. See you later at the court. David seemed taken aback by my quick action but took the divorce papers and started filling them out right there. I'm sorry for hurting you. But thank you for understanding. We will be happy. Saying so, David handed me the filled-out divorce papers. I silently accepted them. As David and Sandy were about to leave, Sandy came close to me and whispered softly, "It's going to be a life of luxury from now on. Sorry for stealing David from you?" After saying that, Sandy showed a triumphant expression, linked arms with David, and left. They seem to have a big misunderstanding, but it's not my place to correct it now. Regarding the divorce, I decided to hire a lawyer and go through settlement negotiations. Since we didn't have children, the discussion would mainly involve dividing assets. Today, David, Sandy, and I were supposed to meet at the lawyer's office to talk. David declared he would accept my demands. Sandy expressed dissatisfaction, but David silenced her, saying it was only natural since they hurt me. I demanded a division of assets I had a right. After settling everything, Sandy stretched and spoke to me. Finally, it's over. Well, it had to be done for me to be happy with David. Good luck living on beans, Allison. With a triumphant expression, Sandy looked down on me and laughed. I didn't respond, and David, looking puzzled, joined in the conversation. What are you talking about? Beans, what does that mean? Well, you're divorcing David, right? You'll have to live in poverty from now on. So, I thought you'd be stuck eating beans to save money, poor thing. Why does divorcing me mean Allison will be poor? Huh? Because you're divorcing the high-earning David. So the housewife Allison will lose her income, right? Hearing Sandy's words, David paused for a moment, then suddenly burst into laughter. What are you talking about? Poor life is on our side. What? Sandy looked at David and me, her eyes wide in surprise. I chose not to join the conversation. David, holding his stomach, struggled to continue speaking. I told you Allison is a CEO. I never said I was working, did I? You did say that, but I thought it was a joke. That's true. Why would I lie about that? I'm the stay-at-home husband. And Allison has been supporting us. She's the CEO of the famous ABC company. Hearing the company name, Sandy turned to me in shock. ABC company. As in the ABC company with annual sales of $1,500 million reported on the news. The famous one? You're joking, right? It's an honor you recognize me. Let me introduce myself again. I'm Allison, the CEO of ABC Company. I pulled out a business card and handed it to Sandy. Sandy took the business card slowly, looking stunned. The company name was clearly written on the card. Sandy's hands were trembling slightly. Why? David's mother said he was an elite with a high salary. How can this be? Hearing this, David looked surprised. While I thought to myself that Sandy and my mother-in-law were in cahoots. I remained silent and listened to their conversation. Why would Mom have such a misunderstanding? You've talked about this with Allison, right? But your mom said it's unthinkable for a woman to earn money. She also said a woman should do all the household chores. Calling someone who can't fulfill a wife's duties the worst, among other things. That's ridiculous. Such thinking is outdated. David sighed, seemingly disgusted by his mother's views. But I chose Sandy over Allison. It's not for the money, but for love. You understand that, right? David said this with a smile while looking at Sandy. But Sandy remained dumbfounded, not even sure if she was following the conversation. Can we consider this discussion over? You've agreed to everything, right?
Yeah.
This wraps up our procedures. I'm sorry for hurting you, Allison. I'll make sure not to involve myself anymore. Please do. And make sure the person over there in a daze. And your mother, stay out of my life too. Got it. We'll be leaving then. David supported a completely deflated Sandy as they left the lawyer's office. The shock of finding out her prize was actually a stay-at-home husband was immense. Whether they can build a good relationship going forward is highly questionable. But that's no longer my concern. Finally free from this mess, I felt a lightness in my heart. Back to being single, I was busy with work but enjoying a carefree life when one day, my secretary reported that a woman was causing a scene at the entrance, demanding to see me. It didn't seem like she was related to work, insisting on seeing the CEO without wanting to discuss anything else, leaving my staff at their wits' end. Despite a bad feeling, I instructed my secretary to bring the person to the reception room and asked to be present during the meeting. As expected, Sandy was there, huffing with desperation in her demeanor. I regretted giving her my business card that day. What brings you to my company all of a sudden? Do you realize causing a scene at the entrance is a nuisance? I don't have your contact. And trying to go to your house got me stopped by the concierge. I had no choice but to come here since I couldn't talk to you. We finished our discussion during the settlement negotiation, didn't we? I never wanted to see you again. I didn't come here because I wanted to. Sandy slammed the table, causing my secretary to grimace, but I signaled to keep calm. That's right. I came here to complain to you. Complain? Yes. You said we settled our assets, but what's with that amount? For a big company CEO, you're being stingy. Sandy was speaking rapidly, clearly desperate. I'm not being stingy. It's a fair amount. Lies. It's true. It didn't seem like she would back down easily. Despite feeling it was bothersome, I decided to explain the situation. First off, our marriage only lasted 6 months. We split my income during that period fairly. Still, why can't we live in that high-rise condo? The house and furniture. It's all marital property, isn't it? It's unfair that you're hogging it all. I was getting tired of dealing with Sandy's persistence. I explained in a subdued tone. I remember you looking around my house the first time you came, which was quite unpleasant. Indeed, if we had purchased them after getting married, they would be considered marital property, as you said. What do you mean? That tower mansion and all the furniture in the house were bought when I was single. So, everything belongs to me. There was never a chance for you to live there. Faced with one reality check after another, Sandy couldn't hide her shock, whispering faintly. I thought marrying David would give me access to wealth, the condo, and luxurious furniture. All of it. It's unfortunate you fantasized about that. But you did get a kind husband who's good at housework. Be satisfied with that. That's right. That's the problem. Hearing my words, Sandy seemed to snap back to reality, raising her voice. What's the problem? David wants me to work. He says I'm suited to be a stay-at-home husband, so Sandy, you need to earn money. I married David thinking I could live comfortably without working. It seems natural for one to work if the other is dedicated to housework. Sandy's issue, however, is more about her expectations clashing with reality. A situation where David's complaints seem justifiable. His role as a stay-at-home husband was sustainable only because I wanted to work outside. For someone like me who loves working, having a partner like David who takes care of the household is indeed a good match. I've always lived at my parents' house and never really worked properly. Now I'm juggling part-time jobs. But I can't secure a stable income because I'm not a full-time employee. David doesn't get mad, though. He says, with my cooking skills, I can easily whip up gourmet meals even on a tight budget. Let's save money together as a couple. It's annoyingly positive. Indeed. That can be a bit troublesome. David's ability to take everything positively could be seen as a strength. But his occasional lack of tact could be irritating. He keeps saying, even a life of beans is fine as long as we're together. I have enough cooking skills to make beans dishes exciting every day. I thought you'd be the one struggling with such a lifestyle, and I felt good about it. If I knew it would be like this, I wouldn't have married David. I don't need a man like that. Take him back. Her frustration likely stems from not being able to live the luxurious life she envisioned. Being forced into a poor lifestyle and living with a nice, but financially incapable husband. It's karma for being so self-centered. Yet, she blames me and takes out her frustration on me as if it's my fault. However, I couldn't care less. I couldn't care less about how you feel, and I don't need a cheating man either. Is that all you came here for? Then, please leave. As I said this, my secretary didn't wait for Sandy's reply and quickly called security to escort her out. I could hear her protesting in the hallway, but her voice gradually faded away. Feeling reassured by my secretary's decisive action to instruct security to turn away such intruders, I sighed deeply. I've had enough of these troubles. Since then, there hadn't been any more attacks from Sandy, and I was enjoying peaceful days at work. One day, as I was leaving the office without having to work late, someone suddenly grabbed my arm. Shocked and unable to speak, I fearfully looked to see my mother-in-law glaring at me with fury. There you are. I've been waiting for hours, and you never showed up. How dare you didn't let your mother-in-law into your home and instead turn her away? What kind of nerve do you have? Here comes another troublesome figure, my mother-in-law. I had forgotten there was one more annoying person to deal with. The sheer persistence of waiting for me to leave work sent shivers down my spine. I responded firmly, hiding my unease. David and I are divorced, so we're strangers now. I have no reason to let unrelated people into my home. I've made it clear to the building landlord that only those I approve can enter. You're so insolent. Respect your elders. She shrieked in a pitch I had never heard before, which was incredibly unpleasant. I would, if there was anything about you worth respecting. But there isn't. Now, why are you ambushing me? What do you want? Ambush sounds so negative. I came all this way because I have something important to say to you. I didn't ask for it. I wanted to run away from this situation immediately. But I knew avoiding her might lead to more ambushes. I didn't want to encounter this person again. So I decided to hear her out, planning to end this once and for all. Why didn't you honestly tell me David wasn't working? It's your fault I'm in this mess now because you deceived me. I've told you multiple times. I was the one working outside, and David was taking care of the home. You're the one who always called me a liar or ignored me. Blaming me for her own misunderstandings was inconvenient. Then you should have made sure I understood. I started living with David and his wife thinking I could enjoy a luxurious life. But the house isn't a high-rise condo, and it's beans every day. I can't take it anymore. So, you were also after the money. Like Sandy, you suffer because you rely on others' wealth. Shut up. It's all your fault I'm suffering like this. You should pay for my living expenses for the rest of my life. That's absurd. There's no way that's going to happen. Didn't your husband work? Even if David and Sandy lack the means, you should be able to get by for the time being, right? Yes. My father-in-law is still alive but has been on long-term assignments away from home for many years, rarely returning to his family home. Nonetheless, there were occasions when we met, and he always treated me very kindly. Dealing with my mother-in-law's nagging was a hassle, but thanks to my father-in-law, I could bear visiting my in-laws. Well, that's... She responded hesitantly. The last time your father came home, he found out about David's remarriage to Sandy, and he divorced me. He even kicked me out of the house, so I decided to live with David and his family. It's natural to be questioned when a son's wife has suddenly changed. Given my mother-in-law's nature, she probably spoke ill of me, making my father-in-law uncomfortable. But even after separating from my husband, I thought living with David, who I assumed was wealthy, would allow for a luxurious life. I was too assertive to him, and now I can't even turn to my husband for help. I'm truly appalled. Your husband was a compassionate man who treated me kindly. If you had reciprocated his feelings, he surely would have helped you. However, what you're facing now is the result of your disregard for others. I won't help you at all. Initially, my mother-in-law seemed somewhat contrite. But as I firmly refused to offer any assistance, her expression filled with anger again. How terrible. Inhuman. After all I've done to appeal to you. No matter what you say, it's fine. If you continue to cause a scene, I'll call the police. You're causing trouble in front of my company. Hearing the word police, my mother-in-law's face turned pale. She bit her lip in frustration but left without saying anything more. Her departing figure was slumped, carrying an air of despair. From what I heard from a lawyer, David, Sandy, and my mother-in-law are still living together. David intended to remain a stay-at-home husband, but realizing that Sandy and my mother-in-law couldn't earn enough for the three of them, he decided to look for a job. However, without a valid reason for not working for several months, David could only find employment at a low-paying company. Ultimately, David's salary alone wasn't enough, and Sandy and my mother-in-law had to take up part-time jobs to barely make ends meet. When David was in charge of the household, the house was spotless, and he prepared homemade meals every day. Now, with everyone working, the house is a mess, meals are mostly pre-made, and arguments have increased. Meanwhile, I was living a comfortable life. I could hire a cleaning service to keep my house tidy, and there were plenty of delicious options for dining out or delivery. I actually enjoy cooking when I have the time. Occasionally cooking for a change of pace isn't bad at all. I was enjoying my carefree solo living. As for work, a company that I started dealing with turned out to be my father-in-law's employer, allowing me to meet him again. Allison, I'm truly sorry. My foolish ex-wife and son have hurt you. No amount of apologies can suffice. He apologized to me, but there was nothing wrong on his part in this situation. Please don't apologize. Though we're no longer family, I hope we can still have a good relationship moving forward. With a slight smile, my father-in-law thanked me. I've had enough of relationships for a while. For now, I'm focused on dedicating myself to work. I have something important to talk about. Listen to me. What? You did say you had things to talk about when you got home, right?
Yeah.
I want us to get divorced. What? Why all of a sudden? This is too sudden and unilateral, isn't it? While undergoing treatment for cervical cancer, my husband suddenly demanded a divorce. I was in a state of panic, unable to understand the reason for his sudden decision. Although he did explain the reason for the divorce, it was utterly unreasonable. I've found someone I love more than you. Please understand. It seems my husband intends to leave me for a 19-year-old woman. I don't mind getting divorced. However, divorce is not something that can be done as easily as saying goodbye in a relationship. I understand what you're thinking. But you can't just decide on divorce right now, can you? Let's discuss this further. What? Why? No matter how much we talk, my feelings won't change. Just give up and let's get divorced. It's not about that. If there's no love, we can't stay as a couple, can we? I won't do anything. My husband started to act recklessly, thinking he's some kind of hero for leaving to protect the woman he loves. His unreasonable demand for a divorce was frustrating enough, but his way of treating me as if I were a monster blocking his path to love was infuriating. I was on the verge of losing my patience if one more thing was said. You're at a higher risk of premature birth or miscarriage because of your cervical cancer surgery, right? That's practically the same as being infertile. A woman without fertility is worthless. I'll remarry a cute 19-year-old. My husband stepped on a massive landmine. These were words that should never have been said. I'll pack my things. I decided not to discuss any further and left the house. If my husband had been a bit more rational and tried to stop me, he wouldn't have ended up regretting it so much. 3 days after leaving the house, I was called by the hospital for a matter concerning my husband. Since our divorce wasn't finalized, I reluctantly went to the hospital. There, I found my husband sitting frozen in his chair, his face pale. Good, you came quickly. What? What happened? Is something wrong? Yes. Your husband, actually. My husband collapsed to his knees. It seemed like divine retribution had struck. I am Megan, a 27-year-old office worker. I married Kevin last year, and it's been almost a year since our wedding. Kevin works as a full-time employee at a supermarket, in charge of the produce section. We met 3 years ago at his workplace, but my first impression of him wasn't that great. What should I make for dinner tonight? It's a hassle. I'll just buy some cheap vegetables like usual and make a stir-fry. Tired from work, I decided on the dinner menu in my head. I knew exactly where everything was in the supermarket I frequented. So I headed straight for the stable and cheap vegetables like beans and carrots. On my way, I stopped when I noticed cabbages were on sale for 99 cents each. One head. I can't finish it alone. It's cheap, isn't it? The price will go back up to $1.58 tomorrow, so it's better to buy now. Cabbage has vitamin C, which is good for your skin. And it also contains vitamin K and calcium, good for your bones. No? Yes. I wasn't expecting to be approached by a staff member at the supermarket. And I was startled when Kevin suddenly spoke to me from behind. Without regard for my confusion, he continued to extol the virtues of cabbage as if he were a clothing store clerk. Baffled, I just nodded, put a cabbage in my basket, and left. After that day, Kevin would always recommend vegetables to me whenever he saw me in the store. Eventually, he started talking about his job and life. And then he started asking about mine, leading to him asking me out for a meal. Essentially, Kevin was hitting on me. The impression of Kevin hitting on a customer during work wasn't good. However, he kept inviting me out, so I thought, why not go out for a meal with him just once? I thought Kevin was frivolous for hitting on me. But when we went out to eat, he was surprisingly kind and sincere. My impression of him changed drastically. And I started to become interested in him, leading to us dating. After we started dating, I asked Kevin why he approached me in the first place. I saw you in the supermarket a few weeks after I started working there. And it was love at first sight. I decided that if I saw you again, I would definitely talk to you. I thought if I didn't do anything just because I was a staff member and you were a customer, I would regret it later. It turns out my husband wasn't frivolous, he was passionate about love. When he falls for someone, he becomes completely focused and loses sight of everything else. After dating for 2 years, we got married last year. Now, thinking about starting a family. That's when a major incident happened. One day, I was suffering in the bathroom. Initially, I thought it was my usual period, but the amount was abnormally high. There were also times when I bled outside of my period, and my urine started to mix with blood. You've been feeling unwell lately, haven't you? Are you okay? I think I'm okay, but maybe you're lacking iron. Should we try eating more spinach and prunes? Nutrition is important, but that's not it. Maybe I should get checked out at the hospital. It still hurts. After leaving the bathroom, my husband, looking worried, spoke to me. However, I soon felt abdominal pain again and had to return to the bathroom. This had been happening frequently lately. Feeling something was seriously wrong, I decided to get checked out at the hospital. Some people believe they could never be seriously ill. I was one of those people who believed they could never get seriously ill. Yet, surprisingly, it's often those very people who suddenly find themselves diagnosed with a major illness. I became one of those cases. You have cervical cancer. Me? But I'm still young. Cancer? Cervical cancer is a type of cancer that often affects younger individuals, starting in the late 20s. At 27, I never imagined I would be diagnosed with cancer. Hearing the doctor's words made me feel weak. And I could feel my back hunch over like an old woman's. However, the doctor offered some hopeful information. And by the time I left the examination room, my posture had straightened a bit. But the thought of having to tell my husband weighed heavily on me. And by the time I got home, I felt like an old woman again. On the night I learned about my cervical cancer, I was nervous about telling my husband as we ate dinner. My timing was off, and I couldn't taste the food, speaking less than usual. Sensing something was different, my husband put down his fork and knife and asked me, "You went to get your test results at the hospital today, didn't you? How did it go?" His question made my heart skip a beat. I put down my fork and knife and braced myself. "I have cervical cancer." "Cancer? But you're so young." "They say cervical cancer can occur even in younger people." "I don't know much about cancer, but can't they remove it with surgery?" "If they remove the uterus, doesn't that mean you can't have children anymore?" "Don't worry. It seems that's not the case. Surgery is necessary. But the disease hasn't progressed so far that they need to remove the entire uterus. So, even though it's cancer, treatment is possible, and so is pregnancy." "Really? That's tough, but it's a relief that treatment and pregnancy are possible." Hearing my words, my husband seemed reassured and picked up his fork and knife again. Seeing his expression, I too felt relieved and continued explaining while holding my fork and knife. Cervical cancer forms around the entrance of the uterus, and the surgery involves using a laser to cut out a cone-shaped piece of that area. So, the shape of the uterus changes after the surgery. This change increases the risk of premature birth and miscarriage. But don't worry too much. Even though there's an increased risk, it's not like it becomes extremely high. "Hey, we're eating right now. Can we not talk about surgeries and miscarriages during dinner? It makes it hard to eat." "Oh, sorry." My husband stopped eating again at my explanation, which made me a bit too cheerful. I decided to continue eating silently, but the tension was gone from my expression. The following week, I was admitted to the hospital for surgery. It was supposed to take 2 or 3 weeks, but that was just an estimate. Depending on the situation, I could be discharged earlier, or it might take about a month. The thought of possibly spending a month in the hospital worried me about my husband's well-being. Make sure you eat properly. Don't fall into a bad diet. I always eat with balance in mind. You're the one who doesn't eat vegetables. And make sure you wake up on time for work, so you don't get late. I'm the one who wakes up earlier for work. You're the one who wouldn't wake up even if I tried. It seems my concerns were unfounded. My husband can manage on his own just fine. When my hospital stay began, I felt anxious about undergoing my first major surgery. And I couldn't sleep at all on the first night. Perhaps sensing my anxiety, my husband visited me the next day and avoided any talk of illness or surgery. This time of year, we get a lot of new student workers. A college guy started in the produce section. And 3 students joined the cashiers, or was one of them a freelancer? I don't remember since I don't go to the cashier section much. Maybe I'll check next time. Didn't you say the new workers usually quit soon? Hopefully, they stick around this time. That's the seafood section. It's tough work there, so it can't be helped. I never thought such mundane conversation could feel so precious. Talking with my husband made me feel like I was at home, bringing me a sense of normalcy. However, on the day of my surgery, I was overwhelmed with anxiety. The nurses tried to comfort me, but as the surgery time approached, their words started to blur due to my increasing nervousness and tension. As I was taken to the surgery room, I felt an urge to run away from the fear. But after entering the surgery room and some time had passed, I realized the surgery was over without me fully understanding it. It lasted about 6 hours, but all I have is a vague memory of it. Under general anesthesia, the surgery I feared so much was over before I knew it, leaving me feeling anticlimactic. Now that the surgery was over and I felt relieved, I was excited about sharing my first surgery experience with my husband. But on the day of the surgery and the following day, my husband didn't visit the hospital. There was no response to my messages. Why wasn't he even contacting me? 5 days after the surgery, just as I was starting to feel upset, my husband finally visited the hospital. "How are you feeling? You seem a lot better than I thought. Do you know how many days it's been since the surgery? You haven't replied to any of my messages. Sorry about that. I'm alone at home now, so I have to handle work and everything at home. I planned to contact you, but I always ended up falling asleep. Well, it's okay. Recovery is going well, and it looks like I won't be in the hospital for a month. That's good to hear. Are you eating properly? After surgery, your body is weak, so it's good to eat soft, leafy vegetables like Napa cabbage and cabbage, which are rich in water. Make sure you eat those. I eat what the hospital serves, so there's not much I can do about it." I had planned to unleash all my frustrations on my husband, but his words reminded me of the inconvenience I was causing him, and I couldn't bring myself to be too harsh. While my husband is capable of living on his own, it doesn't mean he isn't burdened. This made me even more eager to be discharged as soon as possible. Yet, my husband stopped visiting me again after that. Despite my messages, he still didn't reply. I understood he was busy with work and home, but it had been over a week without any response from him. "How are you feeling? Is discharge still a while off? Hold on. I understand that work is busy and managing things at home is tough, but isn't it too much to not hear from you for over a week? Well, it seems like I'm not feeling well. Where? You look perfectly fine to me. It's not like I'm feeling sick or anything." My husband began to fidget and hold his lower body as if he was trying to hold in the urge to go to the bathroom. He seemed uncomfortable, which made me curious about what he was referring to, so I asked directly, "Why are you holding there? Did something happen?" "Well, it looks like I've developed some kind of rash." Is that because? I wondered if he had caught some disease, looking suspiciously at my husband. He seemed to instantly realize what I was thinking and started making excuses right away. "Don't get the wrong idea. It's not like that. Guys can get rashes from sweat and humidity. I just didn't want to say it because it sounds unhygienic." "Are you sure? You're not doing something you shouldn't, right?" "Of course not. I couldn't believe that he would cheat on me while I was in the hospital for surgery. So, I decided to trust what my husband said. I'll trust what you say, but you should see a doctor just to be safe." "It's fine. It's just skin, right? If I improve my protein metabolism with vitamin B6, the rash will go away. I'll just eat some bananas and stay quiet." "No, you need to see a doctor." "No way. It's embarrassing to have someone look down there." My husband fidgeted again, holding his lower body as if the itch was unbearable. Although I think he should see a doctor, I don't understand much about men's issues. If my husband says it's fine, then it must be fine. Not wanting to talk about private issues in the hospital, I decided not to bring up the topic anymore. Another week passed. Again, there was no word from my husband, and the next time he came to the hospital was just before I was discharged. "Hey, I've come to pick you up." "Oh, are you the doctor? Thank you for taking care of my wife." As I was getting an explanation about future care from the doctor, my husband arrived. He hadn't been around to see how I was doing, so I thought it was a good opportunity for some payback. Doctor, listen to this. My husband has a rash down there. And I've been asking him to see a doctor, but he's too embarrassed to go. He thinks he can cure it by eating vegetables. Hey, let's not talk about that now. A rash? That does sound concerning. What does it look like? At first it was just like sweat rash. But recently it got worse, started to bump up, and looks a bit like cauliflower, should I say? You should get that checked immediately. See, the doctor says so. Let's get you checked out now. Today's the day my wife is being discharged. And we have a lot to talk about at home. I'll get it checked tomorrow or after. Make sure you do. It's important to get it looked at as soon as possible. With the doctor insisting, my husband had no choice but to agree to visit the hospital. Despite how embarrassing he found it. I felt a bit embarrassed for bringing it up in front of the doctor. But my husband must have felt much worse. Serves him right. Feeling somewhat vindicated, I left the hospital with my husband. It had been about 3 weeks since I was admitted. But it felt like I hadn't been home in much longer. Excited to be back, I energetically flopped down onto the living room sofa, my usual spot. Instead of sitting next to me, my husband sat across from me, at the other side of the table. Megan, there's something important I need to tell you. Please listen. What? You did say we had things to talk about when I got home, right?
Yeah.
I want us to get divorced. What? Why all of a sudden? Despite having just finished surgery and facing ongoing treatment, my husband dropped a massive bombshell. I was stunned, unable to respond after hearing such unexpected words from him. My husband continued to explain to clear up my confusion. Remember I mentioned a new cashier started? I've fallen in love with her. It happened while you were in the hospital. So I decided to tell you once you were discharged. I thought it might affect your recovery if I told you earlier. This is too sudden and unilateral, isn't it? It's not like I did something wrong, right? No, you didn't do anything wrong. It's just that I've found someone I love more than you. Please understand. Feeling dizzy with his words. I knew my husband was passionate and tended to be single-minded when in love. But I never expected this to apply even after marriage. This new cashier started around the time I was admitted, right? So, you were having an affair with her? That's why you didn't visit me in the hospital. Is your illness from that woman? Don't get it wrong. Yes, not visiting was because I fell for her. But we haven't started dating yet. We decided to wait until after I had broken up with you. So, there's been nothing physical. My husband looked at me with clear eyes. He wasn't lying, and his desire to pursue a relationship after ending ours seemed logical. However, it was overwhelmingly unfair. My husband might have romanticized his actions with passion. But essentially, he was just switching to someone he deemed better. What's her name, this person you like? Nicole. She's a student, right? How old is she? 19. Was she your type? I didn't fall for her because of her looks, but I think she has a cute face. It seems that's the case. Men's thoughts are simple. Younger and cuter is better. Looking at his passionate and straightforward nature from a distance. I wonder if it's always been this off-putting. I'm embarrassed by how happy I used to feel about my husband's passionate love. I'm fine with divorcing a husband who justifies his sleazy actions as a romantic runaway. However, divorce isn't as simple as saying goodbye, like in a romance. There's a lot that needs to be discussed. I understand your point. But you can't just decide on divorce right now, can you? Let's talk this through. What? Why? No matter how much we talk, my feelings won't change. Just give up and let's get divorced. It's not about that. Divorce isn't something you can just do easily, right? If there's no love, we can't stay as a couple, can we? You're not planning to do something to Nicole, are you? I won't do anything. Well, maybe she'll need to be involved in the discussion at some point. I see, you were gathering information like her name and age to harm her. His eyes are as clear as ever. He must think he's become some kind of hero protecting the one he loves. Already irritated by the unreasonable demand for a divorce. His way of treating me like a monster blocking his path to love was infuriating. I was sure that if he said one more irritating thing, I wouldn't be able to hold back. You're at a higher risk of premature birth. Or miscarriage because of your cervical cancer surgery, right? That's practically the same as being infertile. A woman without fertility is worthless. I'll remarry a cute 19-year-old. Nicole can have children without any problems. He stepped on a massive landmine. These were words that should never have been said. I'll pack my things. I decided not to discuss any further and left the house. If he had been a bit more rational and tried to stop me, he wouldn't have ended up regretting it so much. 3 days after leaving the house, the divorce was still in process. But preparations were steadily progressing. It seemed likely that the divorce would be finalized smoothly. That was the expectation, but a phone call from the hospital changed the situation. Expecting the call to be about my health, I answered. Only to be told that they needed to talk about my husband. And asked me to come to the hospital immediately. The hospital didn't know about our ongoing divorce. Perhaps they called my cell phone because I hadn't answered the home phone. Though I thought I might not need to go, since we were still technically married. I reluctantly decided to head to the hospital. Good, you came quickly. What? What happened? Is there something wrong? At the hospital, my husband sat frozen in his chair, his face pale. Having been in a similar situation myself, I had an idea of what this meant. It was likely a serious illness had been discovered. Does my husband have a serious illness? Yes. Your husband came in because of an abnormality in his lower body. And it turns out it looks like penile cancer. Cancer? I shifted my gaze from the doctor back to my husband. He seemed even more rigid than before, probably shocked to hear cancer mentioned again. Is penile cancer, like cervical cancer, more common in younger people? No, it's more common in men over 60. It's quite rare compared to other cancers. The odds are as low as winning $1 million in a casino. Getting it at a young age is like being struck by lightning in a city full of skyscrapers. Extremely unlikely. I see. Knowing my husband had drawn such an unlucky lot made me involuntarily smile. Even though I knew I shouldn't find the situation amusing. So rare to get such a cancer. What's the cause? It's hard to say definitively, but human papillomavirus is a common factor. That's the same as? Yes, it's the same virus that can cause cervical cancer. So, did I give my husband cancer? No, that's not necessarily the case. It can be transmitted through sexual contact, but men can also be carriers. So, it's possible that your husband transmitted it to you. Or both of you had it independently. Normally, the immune system handles it without issue, but sometimes it leads to cancer. Can my husband's cancer be treated? Yes, like your cervical cancer, it can be surgically removed. That means... I looked back at my husband, barely hiding my amusement. I managed to keep my laughter unnoticed earlier, but this time he caught me. What are you laughing at? Sorry. I couldn't help it. Doctor, when you say removal, does that mean all of it? Given its progression, partial removal is likely. What about having children? it won't affect the ability to have children. However, there might be some loss of reproductive function and changes in appearance, though we'll try our best to minimize them. Doctor, just go ahead and remove it all. What the hell is wrong with you? Frustrated, my husband tried to stand up and confront me, but his legs gave out from shock, and he collapsed to his knees. Despite his anger, he continued shouting at me while looking up from the floor. The doctor, unaware of our impending divorce, seemed confused by our exchange, holding my stomach and laughing. The doctor just watched silently as my husband raised his voice at me. He had intended to leave me for a young and cute 19-year-old, probably looking forward to enjoying his time with her. But now, he faced trouble in the most crucial part due to his excitement. Moreover, just as he pointed out my increased risk of preterm birth and miscarriage from my cervical cancer surgery, he now faced a risk to his reproductive function as well. Doctor, we're getting divorced, so there's no need to contact me about my husband's illness anymore. Well then, see you again. Make sure to listen to the doctor and focus on your treatment. Satisfied with the amusing story I heard, I went home. I would be completely satisfied as long as the divorce could be finalized as soon as possible. However, there was a bit of trouble regarding the divorce after finding out my husband was ill. A week after learning about my husband's illness, my phone rang again. Thinking it was about the divorce, I answered, but the call was about something else. Please. Let's pretend we never talked about divorce. What? Why all of a sudden? We've come this far, why now? I told Nicole about my illness, and she broke up with me. Really? I couldn't help but smile again. Luckily, it was a phone call this time, so there was no worry of being scolded for my reaction. I had somewhat anticipated this outcome. My husband tends to go on a rampage when in love, and the love of a 19-year-old is often impulsive. The two of them must have meshed well together. However, after hearing about the illness from my husband, Nicole, much like when I freed myself from the illusion of my husband's love, regained her composure. It was easier for Nicole to leave him than it was for me, given her age and options. With this illness down there, nobody will marry me. We're not divorced yet. Can we start over and support each other since we both have the same concerns about having children? You just want any young and cute girl, right? Don't say things like that. Work is tough. Everyone at the store knows we're getting divorced and that I was dating Nicole. I can't face work if I'm dumped by both you and Nicole. It's too embarrassing. That's not my problem. Maybe you should change jobs. Don't call me about anything other than the divorce, okay? Wait. Don't be so cold. Think it over, please. Finding the conversation pointless, I hung up on my husband's pleading words. It was time to go shopping for dinner. I decided to go to a supermarket that wasn't where my husband worked. Eventually, our divorce was finalized. Nicole, who had dated my former husband, left him and also quit her job at the supermarket. It's unclear where she went, but she's probably living her normal life somewhere, as if nothing happened with my former husband. However, unlike a student, my former husband couldn't easily reset his environment. For now, he seems to continue working at the supermarket. But it seems Nicole shared everything with their colleagues. And my former husband is now working under awkward circumstances, likely feeling quite uncomfortable. I assume he will change jobs eventually. Nicole and my former husband were just in a relationship. So a simple goodbye ended everything for them. But in my case, it was a divorce. A reason had to be provided to our families. I told my former husband's parents everything about why we were getting divorced. Naturally, they were furious. The news spread among relatives, and not just at his workplace. But he also feels out of place among our relatives. As a result, my former husband has become completely isolated. He will soon start treatment for his illness. It must be tough to fight the illness alone, but it's his own doing. So he has to manage by himself. Having completed my surgery and on the road to recovery, I've returned to work. I'm still 27, so I'm hopeful for a good relationship in the future. Until then, I'm determined to work hard. Hey. It's been forever, and the money still hasn't been transferred. What's going on? Transferred? What are you talking about? Contrary to my calm response, my ex-husband, Tony, was getting angry and impatient. $10 million, $10 million. You said your sister was going to inherit it all, didn't you? Although my ex-husband confronted me, I casually dodged his accusations. Looking at my sister, Katie, standing at the entrance to the living room. Her face was filled with regret. Sis, do you have the will? Katie's face shot up as if she was struck. She rummaged through her bag and produced a will, unmistakably in our father's handwriting. From the depths of a drawer, I presented the will I had received from our father. Wait, this is completely different. My name is Stacy. I'm a 25-year-old office worker who married Tony. A childhood friend 2 years my senior, 2 years ago. Currently, I live in an apartment about a 2-hour drive from my parents' home. My sister, Katie, who is the same age as my husband, lives at our parents' home without working. Our mother passed away from illness when my sister and I were young. And our father raised us by himself. My father was the president of an import company. And by societal standards, my family would be considered wealthy. Although I missed having a mother, I never struggled financially. Thanks to my father, for which I am endlessly grateful. Katie has been living off our family's wealth, with no restraint. My father never harshly kicked her out or insisted she work. Of course, if I wanted to quit my job and return home, my father would happily welcome me back. However, I've always wanted to stand on my own 2 feet without relying on my family. I worked hard as a professional, lived on my earnings, and married my childhood friend. It was the ideal life I had envisioned. Everything changed recently when my father passed away. He suffered a heart attack in his sleep and never woke up. Upon receiving the news from my sister, I rushed home but could not come to terms with the situation during the wake and the funeral. When my mother died, I was only 2 years old and hardly remember anything. Losing a close relative since gaining a sense of consciousness felt like being torn apart. I haven't even been able to do enough for my parents. Regret poured out along with my tears. I lamented not visiting my parents' home more, despite living nearby. Because I was too caught up in work. I wish I had seen my father's face more. I wish I had taken him out more. Regret kept piling up in my heart. Contrary to my sorrow, my sister was calm, even cruelly so. How much do you think all the inheritance will amount to? Inheritance? Talking about money so soon after he passed away. In front of the portrait, my sister dared to start talking about the inheritance. It was as if she had been waiting for our father to pass away all along. With $5 million, one could live a life of leisure forever. Stacy, make sure you share properly with me, okay? Even my husband, who had come with me to my parents' house, said such a thing. These people are not human. They don't mourn my father, all they talk about is money. I knew my sister was like this, but I never thought my husband could be so heartless. There might be a will, right? Should we look for it together later?
Yeah.
I agree. Their conversation sounded distant to me. I left my parents' home feeling dizzy. If they were looking for the will, it was already in my possession. My father had entrusted it to me while he was alive. It stated that I would inherit $10 million and that all the real estate owned would be left to my sister. Reflecting on it, my father must have known about Katie's reckless spending when he wrote that will. A colossal fortune of $10 million would vanish like bubbles if left to Katie. Thinking of what was best for Katie, my father decided it would be better to leave her real estate, which would provide a steady, long-term income. It was his way of showing concern for Katie and, simultaneously, a testament to his trust in me. So, how much did you end up getting? My husband, having returned from our parents' home, abruptly asked me this question. Didn't you find the will? No, Katie found it, but she wouldn't show it to me. It had her name on it, so she said she didn't intend to show it to anyone else. You have one too, right? Confused about my father's intentions, I wondered why he prepared 2 wills. Considering Katie hasn't stormed in here yelling, the will found at the family home must have been favorable for her. However, she would prefer $10 million over any real estate. Could the will I have be different in content? A possibility flashed through my mind. What I'm set to inherit is $1,000. I think the rest will probably be inherited by Katie. My husband's eyes gleamed suspiciously. Is Katie inheriting everything? Yes. It's about $10 million, I believe. I just remembered I have something to do. He turned his back to me and hurriedly left the living room. I couldn't chase after him due to the speed of his departure, and I silently watched his back as he left. From that day forward, my husband began to treat me coldly. The number of mornings he returned home without contact increased. And when asked where he had been, he'd evade the question, claiming he was just out for a drive. Seeing my husband always carrying his smartphone, which he usually left lying around in the living room, I began to suspect infidelity. However, time passed without me being able to find any solid evidence. A month after my father's death, when I came home late from overtime work, I noticed the lights were on at home, which was unusual for this time. Familiar women's shoes were at the entrance. Opening the living room door, I saw Katie leaning familiarly against my husband. Welcome back, Stacy. She spoke to me without detaching herself from my husband's arm. What's this about? I asked without even taking off my coat. I've decided to marry Katie. He said it as if it were nothing. Marry? You're not even single. What are you talking about? That's why I'm saying I'll divorce you and then marry Katie. It felt as if the ground was crumbling beneath my feet. My sister, sitting next to my husband, looked at me triumphantly. I wanted to cry, but no tears came. It seemed I had cried them all out when my father died. I knew why I wasn't as sad as I thought I'd be. Does my husband truly love Katie? We have always been together since we were kids, and he chose me as his spouse. It seemed Katie saw my husband as a potential romantic partner, but his eyes were always on me. I knew the reason behind my husband's sudden change of heart. Are you okay with this, Katie? Because Tony is after the inheritance, right? My words halted in my throat, stopped by Katie's sharp gaze, warning me not to continue. Don't get it wrong. Tony told me he likes me more than you. Do you understand what that means? You were dumped by Tony. Katie sought affirmation from my husband, and he smiled softly at her. I felt faint. Along with the sorrow, a bubbling anger began to rise within me. Why did I marry such a man? The anger was directed more at my husband, who had been stolen by my sister, than at my sister herself. She was merely deceived by him. He was trying to get his hands on my father's inheritance by winning over my sister. Tony pointed to the divorce papers on the table. all you have to do is sign here, so get it done quickly," he said, and then he left the house with Katie. I was left alone in the spacious living room. Picking up a pen that was thrown on the floor, I filled in the blanks on the divorce papers. Once the divorce was finalized, my husband and Katie fled overseas as if running away. They didn't need to do that. No one was going to steal Katie's inheritance, and certainly, I wasn't going to chase them out of spite. After they disappeared abroad, I called the family together to verify the wills. The relatives were shocked and flustered by the stark differences between the will Katie had and the contents of another. It seemed that the wills each of us had were exact opposites. Katie must have been overjoyed upon finding the will at home. She was to receive $10 million. She must have trembled with joy. Comparing the will I brought with the copy of the will Katie left behind, someone exclaimed in realization. The flaws became apparent when comparing the two. My father knew Katie's nature well. There was no other explanation. A year later, Tony and Katie suddenly returned to the country and came to my house. Seeing me eating in the living room, Tony raised his voice. "Hey. It's been forever, and the money still hasn't been transferred. What's going on?" "Transferred? What are you talking about?" In contrast to my calm response, Tony was getting angry and impatient. $10 million, $10 million. You said Katie was going to inherit it all, didn't you? Tony confronted me, but I easily dodged his accusations. Seeing my sister standing at the entrance to the living room, her face was filled with regret. "Sis, do you have the will?" Katie's face shot up as if struck. She rummaged through her bag and produced a will. Unmistakably in our father's handwriting, which clearly stated, "Katie is to inherit $10 million, and Stacy is to inherit all the real estate." I presented the will I had received from our father from the depths of a drawer. "Stacy is to inherit $10 million, and Katie is to inherit all the real estate," it read, causing Katie's face to contort. "Wait, this is completely different," Katie exclaimed almost like a scream as she compared the two wills. Tony snatched the will from my hands, quickly scanned it, and began to tremble. "The one you have is fake. Katie is supposed to inherit $10 million. Right. That's the one you wrote yourself, isn't it?" I brushed off their accusations. "Take a good look. It's clearly in Dad's handwriting. And the fake will is the one you, my sister, have." My calm statement brought their actions to a halt. A will without a date is invalid. Did you know that? I showed them the will I had, with our father's signature and the date of creation at the bottom. In contrast, the will Katie held had our father's signature, but no date of creation was written. Dad knew that you would be dazzled by the amount of $10 million. And wouldn't check the date properly. He had anticipated that as long as you believed the will you had was real, you wouldn't try to abscond with the inheritance until the distribution began. Katie collapsed to the floor on her knees. "So, what I received was, yes, not $10 million, but real estate. Dad left all his real estate to you, Katie. Of course, I had it verified by all the relatives, and we've inherited everything accordingly." Katie, possibly shocked that she didn't receive $10 million, had tears in her eyes. Tony seemed unable to accept reality at first, but then, as if a thought struck him, he suddenly brightened up and started talking to Katie. "Real estate is way better than $10 million. $10 million will run out if you spend it, but as long as you rent out the real estate, you'll always have money coming in. We can live in leisure forever." Encouraged by Tony, Katie began to think more clearly, her face flushing with realization. "That's right, I've acquired a money tree." Unfortunately, my voice cut through their jubilation. "It's not a money tree but a liability." Katie's face contorted in confusion. What do you mean? Haven't you seen the news? Oh, you wouldn't know since you were abroad. I took a deep breath and announced. The real estate you inherited from Dad is now worthless. The redevelopment around Dad's properties was halted, and now nobody lives there. I went to see it myself, and it felt like a ghost town. Nobody was there. I pressed on, facing their reluctance to accept reality. Katie, you haven't paid the inheritance tax yet, have you? That is, you might even be charged a penalty for late payment. If that happens, selling all the real estate might not even cover it. The faces of Katie and Tony rapidly paled. You're joking. And the debts in France. Katie finally broke down and cried. According to Tony, convinced that $10 million would be theirs, they had splurged on debts abroad. But a year had passed with no sign of the money being transferred. Only the repayment date for their debts was drawing closer. After being cornered, they hurried back to the country to check the situation. Tony, glancing at me from time to time, approached me with a cajoling tone. Hey, don't you think we can start over? I realized that I do love Stacy. I brushed off Tony's extended hand. In an instant, he was ready to abandon Katie. As soon as he realized $10 million would be mine, he flipped his stance. I don't think we can start over at all. You're just after the money, aren't you? No. I do love Stacy. So, you lying about loving me more than Stacy was a lie. Katie's eyes widened in shock as she confronted Tony. Who would love a jobless, debt-ridden woman like you? That's terrible. You were deceiving me. Their argument escalated quickly, beyond any reasonable control. Honestly, I didn't know what to do. They no longer cared about me, as they were too busy hurling insults at each other. I wondered if I should tell them the truth. After a moment of thought, I spoke up. Sorry to interrupt your argument, but... Oh, so you've decided to remarry me? No, that's not it. I just wanted to let you know that I don't have $10 million anymore. It's troublesome if you're counting on money that's no longer there. It's gone? Katie blinked in surprise, clearly taken aback. I bought a condo that was scheduled for construction. The rest, I donated. So no matter how much you look, there's not a single penny left with me. The two stared at me in stunned silence. After inheriting $10 million, I promptly paid the inheritance tax and thought about what to do with the remainder. I could have donated it all. But it seemed a waste to part with everything my father left me without using any of it for myself. This spring, I bought an entire condo building that's scheduled to start construction near the station. I thought, unlike Tony, having real estate income would secure my future. The rest was donated to organizations for children who had lost their parents. I was fortunate because my father was a company president even though I lost my mother. But I know that's not how it works out for most people. Guilt, like sediment, settled within me from growing up in a privileged environment. Felt slightly alleviated. I can live on my own, with my earnings. I'm different from my sister who lived off our parents' home and Tony, who tried to ingratiate himself with the wealthy. They were crestfallen, but I had no intention of offering them a lifeline. Their situation was entirely of their own making. Well, my words were met with hopeful gazes. I won't say I'll help them out. Let's start with calculating the taxes. Then, sorting out the debts. Don't worry, we'll figure something out. My cheerful declaration was met with their looks of despair. In the end, the combined total of their taxes and debts amounted to $3 million. The real estate Katie inherited was practically worthless, barely fetching a price at sale. Even more troublesome was dealing with foreign lenders. It seems they went as far as coming to the country to collect, leaving the two constantly worried about their whereabouts being discovered. moving from job to job across the country. They had repeatedly asked family and relatives for help, but everyone deemed it a consequence of their actions and refused to lend a hand. Naturally, there were practical reasons as well. No one wanted to attract the attention of loan sharks by carelessly offering help. Thanks to the purchased condominium, I remained busy at work but had some financial leeway. On my days off, I volunteered with children from single-parent families, leading a fulfilling life. Recently, there's been talk of me taking over my father's company. The person who succeeded my father as president has expressed a desire for me to take over. I've put off answering, citing a lack of experience. But I plan to take up my father's mantle once I've gained more experience and matured as a person. As Anthony's wife and the sales department manager at his company, I was shocked by what he said when he came home one day. "I got a 29-year-old beautiful employee pregnant. Please, let's get a divorce." I was stunned. It was so sudden that I couldn't organize my thoughts. Later, I told Anthony that I wanted to talk with the three of us, and lay down on the bed in the bedroom. "Christina is pregnant. The cause of infertility was me." I thought I had run out of affection for Anthony, but I couldn't stop crying. The next day, I overheard a conversation between Anthony and Christina Brown. "Anthony, why didn't you dump a woman who can't bear an heir? She's good at her job. There's no reason to fire her. Then keep her around in the future. When the baby is born, she can take care of it." "That's smart, Christina. She's an older lady, so she probably knows a lot about childcare." I clenched my fists at their laughter. They just say whatever they want. They can laugh now, but I'll make them regret underestimating me. I am Susan, a 44-year-old housewife. 10 years ago, I reconnected with Anthony at a gathering of college friends. Anthony is the only son of a well-known local company. He lost his father when he was young, and now his stepmother is the chairwoman. In college, I took the same lectures as Anthony, but I never got close due to the lively atmosphere around him, and feeling inferior because of our different backgrounds. However, upon reuniting, he didn't flaunt his wealth and was friendly and bright. Later, after dining together, he asked me out, and eventually proposed. My family is just an ordinary salaried worker's household. I was nervous about being opposed by the mother-in-law as not suitable for a bride. But when I visited Anthony's family, they easily accepted me. My university education in accounting, finance, and management, and my qualifications must have made a good impression. After our engagement, I joined Anthony's company and now work as the sales department manager. Growing up seeing my parents' loving relationship, I always aspired to marry. I believed that with someone I love, I could build a warm home. So, I never imagined that my happiness would be shattered just 10 years into marriage. At the beginning of our marriage, Anthony was very kind to me. With his extensive social circle, both professionally and personally, our weekends were almost always booked. Although Anthony's friends included men, women, couples, and married individuals, he interacted with them all appropriately. I was relieved that neither Anthony nor his female friends showed any behavior that could lead to misunderstandings. I admired Anthony's ability to interact without bias with singles, married people, and both genders, as I am quite shy. But over the years, Anthony gradually became colder. He frowned upon seeing me, sighed, and looked disapprovingly at the cosmetics in the bathroom. "Anthony, our wedding anniversary is coming up. I'll make a reservation at our usual restaurant." His response was sullen. "Can't you see I'm busy with work? I don't have time to go to a restaurant." "But you've always made time for it, no matter how busy." Anthony sighed deeply and said in exasperation, "If you want to go that badly, go alone." Still in a honeymoon phase? I was hurt by his harsh words. He must be tired and irritated, I thought. I sent him a tie from his favorite brand for his birthday, but he didn't appreciate it. Susan, you have no taste. I'm tired of this brand. Why do you keep adding to the useless stuff in the drawer? I'm sorry. I researched online and even visited the store to carefully select it, but to be spoken to like that. I don't remember doing anything to anger him. Despite claiming to be busy, he regularly went out with friends. Could it be that he doesn't want to go out with me? That thought crossed my mind. Then, a decisive event happened. I was excited to get ready when invited to go to the mall. Dressed in new clothes, and with my makeup done especially for a private outing. I waited happily for Anthony to get ready. But when he saw me, he smirked. What's with that outfit? A skirt at your age? It's unseemly. Is it bad? Aren't you aware of your age? You're a proper old lady at over 40. The makeup is too much, and curling your hair, it's embarrassing. You used to be cute, but it's different now. His tone of contempt pierced my heart. But your friends dress up, right? They're beautiful, so it's fine. You're different. Dressing young at your age is just painful. As I tried to argue, Anthony clicked his tongue. Dress more normally. Do you want to embarrass me? Forget it. I've lost the mood to go. You've ruined it even though I invited you. He scratched his head in discomfort, threw his jacket on the sofa, and retreated to his study upstairs. For lunch today, let's have lasagna. I want to eat in 30 minutes, so please get it ready. His voice came down from the top of the stairs. I had just put a bit more effort into my look for a rare outing. But why did I end up upsetting Anthony? I bit my lip to hold back tears, changed into room clothes, removed my makeup, and began preparing lunch. When I think about it, Anthony is the same age as me, so if I'm an old lady, he's an old man too. I might not be beautiful, but Anthony is just an average middle-aged man with a medium build, like any other. Raised to be the next company president, he has high pride and is full of confidence. I used to find these traits appealing before we got married. But I never expected to be looked down upon like this. Sometimes, I almost speak up against him. But since we work together, I have to face Anthony at the company too. If our relationship as a couple is awkward, it affects our employees. Thinking this, I always end up yielding and trying to keep Anthony in a good mood. At home, he may be a strict husband, but once he steps outside, he's charming and leaves a good impression on everyone he meets. He's a typical second-generation rich kid with no real business skills. But his refreshing smile and approachability have made him popular among business partners. In contrast, his grumpiness at home is like that of a different person. I'm the president, you know. I can't eat such cheap food. Even microwave food would be better. He always complains if the meal is not what he wants. And rudely has microwave food beside me as I eat. Also, he seems displeased when I have plans to go out while he's at home. Going out without taking care of your husband, are you even a housewife? I'm just going to buy clothes. Lunch is ready to be heated in the microwave, and I'll be back before dinner. You should be serving meals yourself as a housewife. You're living off the money I earn, and yet you act so privileged. Of course, my salary as a full-time employee is less than President Anthony's. But I do contribute a decent amount to our living expenses. I have no reason to be criticized. Originally, when Anthony took over the company from his mother, he was inexperienced and caused trouble with business partners. I was the one who apologized and smoothed things over. You were cute 10 years ago, but now you're like a worn-out rag. Lately, he's always mocking my appearance. You failed as a wife the moment you couldn't bear an heir. I'm keeping you out of pity. Be grateful. I wanted children too, but it can't be helped that we didn't have any. Maybe we should get tested at the hospital? We might still have a chance. When I suggested this, Anthony shook his head. I don't want to waste extra money. It must be your fault anyway. I'll forgive you since you're good at your job. When I get frustrated, I meet with my best friend, Kate, and vent to her. She's known me since college and knows about Anthony, so she sympathizes with me. Anthony puts on a good face in public. So he takes out his frustration on you at home. He's such a hopeless man. Kate, resting her cheek on her hand, frowned. He used to come crying to you saying, "What should I do, Susan?" Does he think he grew the company all by himself? Maybe he's forgotten his humble beginnings. I murmured softly. I worked hard too, despite the support from my mother-in-law and other executives. Thanks, Kate. I feel better now. When I thanked her, Kate replied with a bright smile. I'm always on your side, Susan. If anything happens, let me know. I'll help you. Her strong words lifted my spirits a bit. Lately, Anthony's behavior has been noticeably strange. He's always out on weekends under the guise of socializing. Even on weekdays, he doesn't return home until after midnight. Yet he never seems tired, always looking rather happy. On Sunday evening, after finishing my chores, I was reading in the living room. Anthony had left in the morning without telling me where he was going. Likely not to return until late at night. But unusually, he came home just after 8 p.m. Entering the living room, his cheeks were flushed, unable to hide his excitement. Welcome home. You're back early today. Susan, be happy. What? Why? I'm going to be a father. I blinked in surprise. What? I got a 29-year-old beautiful employee pregnant. Please, let's get a divorce. I was taken aback, staring at Anthony's face. It was too sudden to process. I'll finally be a dad. A successor at last, mother will be pleased. Wait. Are you saying you cheated? When I asked in astonishment, Anthony answered without remorse. Do you know Christina Brown from accounting? Yes, she's pretty. Right, beautiful and in shape. Still in her 20s, and she's good at her job too. Women are best when they're young. I knew Christina was beautiful, but it was the first time I heard she was competent. So, you're no longer needed. Let's get divorced. His blunt statement annoyed me. Over these 10 years, my dissatisfaction with Anthony has accumulated. And I have no attachment to our marriage. But I'm not so naive as to agree immediately. If he's been cheating, I'll have to demand a substantial compensation from both of them. I'm troubled by your sudden request. Can you invite Christina Brown to our house later? Let's discuss this, the three of us. After I said this, Anthony's voice became lively. Got it, I'll let her know. Watching Anthony's happy stride as he went to take a shower, I closed my book. I went upstairs to the bedroom and lay on my bed. I felt a sense of emptiness. I was more devastated by the fact that a child had been conceived than by the shock of the affair. Anthony had always wanted an heir. Of course, just because he wanted one didn't guarantee it would be a boy. But before that, I hadn't been able to get pregnant. If Christina was pregnant, it implied the issue was with me. Would Anthony and I have been happily raising a child together by now? If I had been able to conceive. I thought my affection for Anthony had long since run out. But I couldn't stop the tears from flowing. The next day, with swollen eyes, I went to work early and brewed myself some coffee to wake up. As I was about to leave the hallway, I overheard a conversation between Anthony and Christina Brown. Was she shocked?
Yeah.
She was stunned. She really didn't notice the affair? That's hilarious. It's been going on for 2 years. Christina chuckled. Anthony, why didn't you dump her sooner since she can't bear an heir? She's useful as a housekeeper, and she's good at her job. If we divorce, she'll probably quit and go work somewhere else, feeling awkward. Then let's just keep her around. We can dump her anytime. Once the baby is born, she can take care of it, being the president's child and all. To this outrageous suggestion, Anthony responded with admiration. That's smart, Christina. She's an older lady, so she probably knows a lot about childcare. If we say it's for the child, she'll probably listen. They both laughed loudly, and I clenched my fists. They just say whatever they want. They can laugh now, but I'll make them regret underestimating me. After making various preparations, I told Anthony to invite Christina to our house in 2 weeks. On the day of her arrival, Christina came over like she was visiting a friend's house. Thanks for having me. Wow, Anthony's house is really nice. I've always wanted to come here. Christina's eyes sparkled as Anthony arrogantly spoke. You should have said so sooner. I made her cook and entertain you. Ignoring my grimacing face, Christina looked around the room curiously, wandering around. This kitchen is so spacious and stylish. It's totally different from my one-room apartment. Your place was cute too. It felt like a young woman's home. Really? Can I see the other rooms, Anthony? To her brazen request, Anthony grinned and led the way. This is the guest room, and next to it is the sunroom. A sunroom? I want one in my house too. Oh, there aren't many houseplants. Such a waste of this spacious area. Is this Susan's preference? Christina complained about the space with a glass table, an indoor hammock, and only 2 potted plants. She's here to apologize for the affair, yet she criticizes the interior of my home. What kind of person is she? No, a normal person wouldn't propose having the president's wife raise her child.
Nah.
Forget it. Susan is different from you, kind but kills plants quickly. She must be disliked by them. Really? Poor Susan. They both laughed heartily, and I bluntly said, You came here to talk, right? Let's sit at the table and start. Anthony and Christina sat on the sofa across the table, and I began. I want to confirm again. Christina, you are pregnant with Anthony's child, right? They both nodded. Susan, I'm sorry. But this is fate. Christina's eyes welled up with tears, and she clasped her hands together in a pleading gesture as she looked at me. Her overly familiar manner of addressing me grated on my nerves. The baby coming to me means that Anthony and I were meant to be together in a past life. Marrying you was a mistake. To correct this and restart our lives, we can't make Anthony and you unhappy. I love both of you, so I can't allow that to happen. Christina's absurd logic made me smirk. Her self-justification was so extreme that I moved beyond anger to disbelief. I truly love Anthony. So please, let me have Anthony's baby. I beg you. Christina pleaded in a sweet voice, and Anthony sniffled, apparently moved to tears. I love Christina too. It's sad for our child to be born without a father, especially since it's the heir of Takeda Industries. We need to raise it together. They sat close together, making a serious appeal, and my feelings only soured. This incident completely extinguished any remaining affection I had for Anthony. I had no desire to continue as husband and wife. Fine, but I'm quitting my job. What? Keep working. Anthony frowned. You'll struggle to find work at your age if you quit now. Considering your past contributions, I'll let you stay at the company. Really? With my qualifications in management, I'm sure I can find something. Anthony, you're so kind. Since the president is saying so, Susan, you should stay at our company. I don't mind at all. I sighed as I glanced sideways at the smiling Christina. It's impossible. Because that woman. She paused for a moment, then dropped a bombshell. She's been embezzling money from the company. What? Christina's eyes widened for a moment before she avoided Anthony's gaze. And uncomfortably looked down at the floor. What did you just say? Anthony was visibly shaken. I kindly explained. This woman has been pocketing entertainment and travel expenses. She'd fill in blank receipts with whatever amounts she wanted. As Anthony's face turned pale, I continued calmly. It's been going on for 2 years, and nobody noticed except for me. I finally discovered it after interviewing the relevant parties recently. I sighed as I spoke. Even though it's a family business, I thought I should cut ties with such a lax company. I'm sick of seeing your faces after the divorce, so I'm going to look for a job elsewhere. Stop making these baseless accusations. Christina's face contorted as she protested. Where's your proof? The chief accountant you seduced confessed everything to the executive director. Want to see the video? As I reached for my phone, Christina covered her face with her hands and started sobbing loudly. I'm sorry. My father's company went bankrupt, my mother collapsed from the shock and got a terminal illness. And my brothers rebelled against our parents and disappeared after incurring debts. My salary alone wasn't enough, so I just did it. Christina sobbed heavily, as if she had prepared eye drops beforehand. Anthony was easily fooled and hugged her, looking somber. That's tough. You should have told me. I didn't want to trouble you, Anthony. I used all the money to pay off debts. I can't pay it back now. Anthony seemed to genuinely believe her blatant lies. Though she probably squandered the money herself. Don't say that. We're not strangers. Crying too much will harm the baby in your belly. How much was it? $20,000. Of course, you'll have to pay it all back. Depending on your attitude, I could also press charges for embezzlement. That's something our company can cover. Who knows about this? All the executives. Then I'll make sure they keep quiet. Christina, don't do it again. Yes, I won't. Thank you so much. As Anthony patted Christina's head, I was appalled. Such leniency from a president was unbelievable. It felt like watching a poorly acted couple in an outdated romance drama, making me nauseous. I suppressed my nausea and continued as planned. So, Christina, were you working at a nightclub to help your family too? Anthony momentarily looked disturbed, but quickly pretended it was nothing. Our company doesn't prohibit part-time jobs. But you should have reported it. I'm sorry. I didn't miss the stiffness in Christina's face. I smiled as I laid out photos on the living room table. This kind of behavior seems harmful to the baby, honestly. But if it's your choice, Christina, I guess it can't be helped. Christina's expression shifted instantly. She snatched the photos from one end of the table. What's this? It's you with customers. Anthony, you probably don't want to see this, right? While Christina responded with a forced smile, I laid out another set of photos in front of Anthony. He gasped. Understandably, as all the photos showed Christina entering hotels with different men, indicating intimate relationships with multiple men. Christina hastily gathered all the photos, but it seemed too late. Lost for words, Anthony listened as Christina desperately made excuses. It's not what it looks like. I felt sick during dates outside the club and went in to rest. I didn't do anything wrong. Believe me, Anthony. Christina pleaded with sparkling eyes, but even Anthony looked stunned. Really?
Ah.
You don't believe me, Anthony. That's awful. You're the only one for me. Clinging to his arm and passionately pleading, Anthony's expression turned bitter. I sighed and stood up. I brought out my personal laptop from the bedroom, inserted a USB from the private investigator, and played the damning audio evidence. Anthony clutched his head as the indecent voices filled the room. Stop it, please. It seems hotel walls are quite thin. Easy to record through them. Amazing technology, isn't it? As Christina approached me with a demonic look, she hurled insults. You shameless woman. Are you doing all this just to break us up? You don't care about Anthony's feelings, do you? You're okay with hurting him. I'm simply exposing the truth. You're the one who hurt Anthony. Are you really pregnant? Or do you just want to be the president's wife? That's not it. I'll start showing soon. It's definitely Anthony's child. With your history, who knows whose child it is? A mother's intuition. Intuition, huh? At this point, her audacity was almost laughable. Christina Brown aggressively confronted me, raising her voice in objection. I'm not with those guys for real, they're just for fun. The only person I truly love is Anthony. Well, I'm sorry, but I can't understand your way of thinking, Christina. I shrugged my shoulders in resignation and then turned to Anthony. What about you, Anthony? Would you still raise a child as your heir if it turns out to be nothing like you? Well, that's... Caught off guard by his hesitation, I threw a sarcastic comment. So any boy will do, even if he's not your own? Just like a cuckoo bird? What? It's my child, so it's not someone else's. And you, who can't even get pregnant, have no right to talk. Christina exploded with anger. You know, you've always acted so high and mighty despite being ugly. I've hated you since I joined the company. Just because you're good at your job doesn't give you the right to boss everyone around. She glared at me, furiously lashing out. Always telling me not to flirt with the male staff or use my charms on the bosses. You're so annoying. As I remained silent, Christina grew more emboldened and continued in a vulgar tone. You're just jealous because you're ugly, right? You thought you were a winner by marrying the president, but too bad for you. Christina laughed shrilly. Hey, enough of that. Anthony seemed exasperated by Christina's rudeness. He tried to stop her by pulling on her sleeve, but the heated Christina kept hurling insults. You can't have children, and you're not even attractive. In the old days, you would have been divorced long ago. But you're lucky to live in these times. It's only because Anthony is kind that he kept a defective product like you around. But that's over now. Hand over the president's wife position to me. And go back to being single, old woman. Fed up with responding, I tuned out Christina's ranting and raving when suddenly the living room door opened. The arrival of the new person caused Anthony to turn pale. Mom. Oh, the chairwoman? Perfect timing. Christina brightened up and stood, bowing to her mother-in-law. Nice to meet you, Mother. I'm Christina Brown from the accounting department. I'm pregnant with Anthony's child. It's definitely a boy. I'll be giving birth to the heir, so I'll marry Anthony. The mother-in-law appeared exasperated, massaging her temples. She sighed deeply and spoke in a low voice. Anthony. Can you silence this light-headed woman for a moment? Christina was taken aback by the mother-in-law's harsh words. She looked at Christina with disdain, as if she were looking at trash. And scolded Anthony sharply. The only person who has the right to call me mother is Susan. Anthony, it's because you're so oblivious that you let weirdos like this take advantage of you. Christina was confused but managed a forced smile.
Ah.
I mean, chairwoman. I'm carrying Anthony's child. I just know it's a boy. I'll bear a worthy heir to replace the incompetent Susan. Children are essential for the future of the company, right? However, the mother-in-law grimaced at Christina's desperate appeal and spat out. I don't care if it's a grandson or granddaughter. You want to be the president's wife after embezzling company funds? How dare you? But, Mom, Christina's family situation is complicated. Can't we overlook it just this once? The mother-in-law replied with a half-smile. You silly boy. Do you really believe her story? She threw a document on the table, causing Anthony to look utterly dejected upon seeing it. So you had her investigated by a private investigator too, Mother. Oh, I see. I chuckled as I looked at the document. Your parents work for major corporations, and your brother is studying abroad. Your family is way wealthier than mine. So the embezzled money was for your personal use? Anthony stared at Christina in disbelief. She's been caught shopping in bulk at brand stores. It's more like she's in debt from credit card payments, right? The mother-in-law laughed through her nose. Also, the obstetrics and gynecology clinic she visits is run by my acquaintance. After explaining the situation, he told me she's not pregnant. What? She's been going there for irregular periods. Right? Christina turned bright red under the mother-in-law's sly smile. You old hag. How dare you spread my personal information like that? Okay. Anyway, we'll be pressing charges for embezzlement. Kate, could you handle the procedures? Understood, Chairwoman. I smiled at Kate Anderson, who appeared behind the mother-in-law. Yes, my best friend Kate was the company's legal advisor. When Christina's embezzlement came to light, I informed the mother-in-law and immediately consulted with Kate. We were calculating the right time to pursue the matter when Anthony proposed divorce to me. I'm sorry for lying about the pregnancy. But it's true, I do love Anthony. Please believe me. Christina implored with tearful eyes, softening Anthony's expression. Christina. Oh, and Anthony. You'll be stepping down as president for your infidelity. Anthony and Christina gasped in shock. What? Just for an affair. You had an affair with a woman who embezzles, it's only natural. Not a single executive sided with you. No way. Anthony held his head and began to tremble. Anthony has always been well received by our clients. And remembered favorably by other company presidents. That's why we kept him around, even though he's useless. The mother-in-law continued in a stern tone. But, a stupid son who neglects Susan. Who has contributed to the company. And cheats with a brainless young woman is frankly useless to us. No, you can't be serious. Fired? Please, have mercy. I was deceived by Christina. Anthony raised his voice, almost crying. Mom, I was wrong. It was just a momentary lapse in judgment. I'll break up with Christina, so please let me stay at the company. I can't start over at my age. Anthony begged pitifully, clinging to his mother, as Christina seemed turned off by his behavior. What? You were so smitten with me. And now you just flip like that when your mom threatens to abandon you? You're the worst. Christina's anger flared. I only got close to you because you were the president. I wouldn't have given a second glance to a greasy old man 15 years. My senior if he were just a regular employee. Huh? You said you fell for me, even without my title. You lying woman. Believing that makes you an easy mark. That's why I could deceive you. Christina's words made the mother-in-law shake her head in dismay. Both of you are as bad as each other. In that sense, you're a perfect match. Just then, the doorbell rang. Checking the monitor at the entrance, a police officer was standing there. They had come in a patrol car without sirens, considering the neighbors. Christina appeared shaken, not expecting to be actually arrested. When the officer entered the room, Christina started to flirt with him. "Officer, please listen. I was deceived by the chief accountant. We'll discuss this at the station. Please come with us." Dismissed coldly by the detective, Christina clicked her tongue and was escorted away in the patrol car. Anthony, who had been watching dumbfounded at the door, returned to the sofa with unsteady steps and slumped down. The same day, the complicit chief accountant was also arrested. However, since both were first-time offenders, they were soon released. Having spent all the embezzled money, Christina had no savings and had to borrow money to repay the stolen amount. And my compensation. Having been fired from the company, she resumed working at the nightclub and took up additional part-time jobs during the day. She ended up working tirelessly, day and night, weekdays and weekends, and seemed to have no time to care for her appearance anymore. When I saw her on the street recently, she was gaunt and bore no resemblance to the beautiful employee she once was. As for Anthony, after the divorce, he was spared from being fired thanks to his mother's mercy, and was transferred to a regional branch. The story of his demotion spread among the employees, and Anthony continued his work in a hostile environment. Cut off by his mother and having spent all his savings on my compensation, Anthony even begged me for reconciliation. "Susan, I was wrong. I won't cheat again, let's start over. A divorced man is in trouble financially, you won't abandon me, right? Why don't you ask those young girls you love so much to pay your living expenses? You still have a job, even if it's low paying, so work hard." I scolded him over the phone and blocked his contact, and he finally gave up. According to the mother-in-law, his once bright personality was gone. He worked in silence every day and spent weekends locked up in his room. In Anthony's place, his cousin, who had been the vice president, became the new president. I was recognized for my past performance and promoted to a director on the board. The new president, though not good at speaking, was sincere and respected by the employees. My days have become busier than ever, but they are fulfilling. Although divorced from Anthony, I occasionally have meals with the mother-in-law. I realized that despite being the company chairwoman, she never pressured me for an heir. This incident has deepened my respect for her character. My ties with Anthony may have been cut, but I hope to continue a close relationship with the mother-in-law as a mentor and friend in life.